Hello, I'm here today in the Tom Crean Brewery in Kenmare, and I'm here with Aileen Crean O'Brien, and we are talking today granddaughter to granddaughter, proud granddaughter to proud granddaughter. Yeah, because you can see here the grandfather of Aileen, Tom Crean, the polar explorer, and you can't see at the moment Robert Dudley Edwards, my grandfather, but we'll be talking about him as well, the Irish historian. So Tom Crean, just to say a few words about the two of them. Tom Crean was on three of the great polar expeditions between 1901 and 1917. Two of them with Robert Falcon Scott, yeah, and the third one was with
Sir Ernest Shackleton.
Yeah, right. And all of that is celebrated and remembered here in the brewery, and in fact in the whole town. Yeah. And Robert Dudley Edwards, my grandfather, he was quite well known as a historian during the 50s, 60s and 70s. He was a larger-than-life character who really tried to teach people history itself, the facts, rather than a biased view of it or the view that the church or the state wanted to have. Yeah. One of the differences between the two grandfathers is that your grandfather, it wasn't that he was forgotten like mine. He hadn't become famous in the first place.
Yeah, because of when he retired in 1920, because of the political climate at the time, he couldn't say he was in the English Navy. It was dangerous. In fact, Black and Tans raided his pub and pulled him out and held him at gunpoint until they rummaged through his house and they found his naval uniforms and apologised and left. So he just kept his head down, said nothing. In fact, he never gave an interview.
Yes, never gave an interview.
Yeah, and there was a huge risk of his story dying before with him.
Right. Okay. And I wanted to ask you, why do you think that you and I are both so keen to keep alive the memory of what they did and their messages?
He was such an inspiring character, and I think it doesn't matter what age you are or what century you're in. He came from a poor farm, from a small farm, a poor family, 10 children, and look what he achieved, So, and it just goes to prove, like, he didn't become a hero overnight. So, and because he was forced into situations where he had to dig deep, and for all of us, I think, in life, we can tootle along through life, and it isn't until life throws challenges at us that then we have to dig deep and deal with it and overcome it, and that makes you stronger and more able to deal with what's coming next. And I think it's important for children to know that, and just because you fail the first time doesn't mean you give up. You just have to keep trying. And he was such an inspiring character. I think his story should be kept alive, for generations to come.
And I think actually with both of them, because you're talking there about him and children really appreciate his story, as I think young people appreciate the story and the courage of my grandfather. Yeah.
Because Tom himself, he loved children, and Michael Smith wrote a book, The Iceman, and it's on the school curriculum in Ireland, which is great. And I think Tom, of all the accolades that could be showered upon him, I think he'd like that one the most.
Right, okay, yeah.
And if you can inspire just one child to follow their dream, I think, job done.
Yeah, right, yeah. Because it was in the year 2000 that he suddenly became famous, wasn't it? All those years after he died, because Michael Smith had researched his life and published the book, and that came out, and now I just mentioned Tom Crean to people in Ireland, and I haven't met a single person who doesn't know who I'm talking about.
Yeah. But the family are indebted to Michael because of writing The Unsung Hero, and it wasn't an easy job because Tom didn't keep a diary like most sailors did.
Yeah.
So Michael had to research other diaries and unpublished diaries.
Yeah.
And then assimilate all that information to write the book about Tom Crean. But one of my theories is that these guys, they were on expeditions for 3 years in extreme conditions with no contact with the outside world. So you had to get on with everybody that was there. And sometimes, it wasn't easy. It wasn't like that. So what the sailors would do was they'd keep a diary in, and then they'd get all this anger off in their diary. But Tom didn't keep a diary. But everybody said he was such an easygoing, likeable character with a great humour. So I think he just got on with everyone, and he didn't need to write a diary himself.
And he had other ways of having that sort of the human touch, because he was the right-hand man, really. It sounds like both of Shackleton and of Scott. He was the one that they really relied upon. They knew that he was 100% loyal and he was 100% tough, because he was going out there against probabilities of 1 to 1,000 that he was going to survive at times.
Exactly, yeah. So initially in 1901 he was on the Scott expedition, and Shackleton was also on that expedition. So both Shackleton and Scott were really impressed with Tom Crean physically and mentally.
Yeah.
So after that expedition, Scott kept him with him. So no matter what ship Scott was on, Tom was by his side.
Yeah.
And then he finished the second expedition with Scott. Unfortunately, Scott died on that expedition. So that was 1913. And you think after surviving 2 expeditions, Antarctic expeditions, he'd hang up his boots and say, I got through that one okay.
Yeah.
But no, Shackleton came up with this idea to do a trans-Antarctic trip, the Imperial Trans-Antarctic expedition. So, and he looked for Tom Crean to go with him because he knew he was reliable, he was loyal, he was strong, and he could depend upon him. He was dependable.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah. Did you learn a lot about him when you read Mick Smith's book? Did that help Did you get to know him better in that way?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, growing up as a child, we had the sitting room in the house that we only kind of used at Christmas, but it was full of his memorabilia.
Right.
His dress sword was on the mantle on the breast of the fireplace. There was actually a silver tea set that was a wedding present and it was engraved from Shackleton on my grandmother's piano. There was also an autographed photograph of Evans's mother and Evans's father in appreciation for Tom saving their son's life.
Yes.
And there was other bits and pieces. So that inspired me to go on my expedition in 2016. But as regards, we had, my mum would tell us a few stories, and Grandma, his wife, lived with us for 20 years. But it was great to have Michael's book, to get more details and to learn more about this grandfather.
And you clearly, the people watching this video can see you, and they can see your grandfather, and there's clearly a resemblance between the two of you.
I have to grow the beard.
Yeah. And you're not doing very well on the pipe either.
No.
Yeah. But I wondered if you could tell us what other similarities do you see between yourself and your grandfather?
I think he was very tough, and no matter what situation he was put in, he would meet the challenge and he'd overcome it, and but behind it all he was a big softy. Like when he waved off Scott's team that were going to the pole, he was very disappointed he wasn't selected to go with Scott all the way to the pole, but this big giant of a man that they all looked up to physically and mentally, he was they called him a giant of a man. He started crying.
Yeah, right.
So I think he knew in his heart and soul that he may not see his comrades again, and when he was himself and Lashley had to go back with Officer Evans, and Evans became ill, and they ended up man-hauling him for 100 miles, and so at one stage they thought he was dead, and Tom put his ear down near him to see if he could hear him breathing, and he didn't, and so he thought he was dead, and the hot tears fell down on Evans and kind of woke Evans up and said, Crean, So he was a big softy behind it all. Yeah. And I'm a bit like that, I was thrown challenges early in my life, and you just say, well, that's it today, and tomorrow's going to be different, and you just move on and deal with it. But like that again, cry over little things as well. And Tom loved animals as well. He took care of the pups, the huskies. He trained them. He kept his pony Bones alive the longest, which meant he manhauled the least. And we always have dogs in our house, and I like dogs as well.
Yeah, right. Okay, and what I wanted to ask you, what you think made them both strong, and maybe I could just throw out something about my grandfather, which maybe the two of them had in common. That your grandfather was certainly like this, because Dudley was involved in a big project which he passionately believed in, which was bigger than himself, and it put his own life into a different perspective. And that project was to teach history, and so to put people in touch with reality. He was trying to teach a different kind of history, which wasn't based on hating the Brits or on myth, but it was actually about facts. Because if you can really face up to what's happening today, you can make better decisions. And I think it made him a very happy person in a way, because if you're like that, it means that you're optimistic that somehow we can work things out together. It's worth trying. Does any of that echo with you and Tom?
Yeah, I think so. He like that. He I mean, your grandfather, in a way, he followed what he believed in. He followed his dream to and stuck to his guns. And Tom was a bit like that. He went off and joined the Royal Navy. Maybe not exactly a dream, but it was because life was tough. But he was very happy. In everyone said that he was always in such good humour and everything. So I think it makes a difference.
Yeah, they were both cheerful people. There's all these photographs of your grandfather smiling in these unexpected circumstances, and everyone else, by and large, looking a bit grim.
Smiling. Very worried. Yeah. He seemed to be a supreme optimist.
Yeah, great. Well, it's lovely to be here, and thank you very much for talking.
Thanks very much, Nessa. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.